Yeah, this is probably going to be a long video, and I know I'm late, but I wanted to watch everything on my radar before I made this list. I didn't want to miss anything. 2020 was a frankly terrible year for me personally, even excluding the whole world has gone to shit thing. But there were plenty of movies from 2020, some great, some terrible. Like last year, I'm just going to start with the worst, move up to the best, and give some sort of snarky wordplay award to each one. And this list is based around UK release dates, so some movies that you might expect to be on the 2019 list aren't, because they were released in 2020 here. Easily the worst movie I saw this year, but boy, was an unpleasant slog to get through. It was about 10 minutes in where a man decides to shove an entire child up his ass that I knew I wasn't going to care much for this movie. It's not good, but I'm glad it exists. The fact that a movie this weird managed to get made is impressive at the very least. With that said, of course, it's utter shit. Do not bother with this movie. It's not even so bad it's good. It's just bad. Honestly, this one upset me. Ashens is a content creator which makes some pretty good content as far as I'm concerned. And his first movie, Quest for the Game Child, was pretty okay. Made even better by it being released for free on YouTube. Unfortunately, lightning doesn't strike twice, as Ashens and the Polybius Heist is a disappointing movie. The humour was annoying, and the actual filmmaking feels more like a high-budget YouTube video, ironically. I'm a big fan of Ashens, but I can't recommend this movie except to the hardest of hardcore Ashens fans, and even then this is so different to his usual videos that feels like a stretch. Spree is one of those movies that feels like it could be either darkly hilarious or darkly terrifying. This weird kind of mishmash best of both worlds approach was the wrong route to take, I think. Honestly, some of the themes could have really hit me hard. As someone who spent a long time making vapid, empty content and just throwing it into the void in a vague attempt to matter, I should have at least related to the character's motivation, but no. Reminds me a little bit of a mishmash of Searching, Maniac, the movie, not the Netflix series, the one with Elijah Wood, Chronicle, and Nerve. Side note, remember Nerve? Which is proof that you can't only use an interesting premise to make a movie happen. This movie and Spree are probably about as good as each other. That is to say, not very good. But I put the platform, or El Horror if you prefer, higher because I think the premise is a lot more interesting and creative. I only wish it were used on a better movie. There's really not much to say about this film. It creates an interesting situation, but it doesn't really pay it off. It just kind of ends. It's wasted potential, the movie. You want to talk about a movie which should have been better? Check out Greed. There's some dark humour, and the background to watching this terrible man become what he is makes for the best parts of the film. Some points a satirical genius, just sadly there's not enough. Outside of the tongue-in-cheek humour about capitalist decadence, there's not really a lot of humour that works in this film. The son, Finn, is the worst character, and acts too much like some sort of Joker wannabe at times. It's one of those movies I like because it's interestingly flawed. If they'd have trimmed out all the planning for MacReady's party and made it a pseudo-origin story, I think the movie would have been a lot stronger. As it stands, it's the nucleus of a good film, dragged down by padding and filler. And that's a shame. This one is going to get me some hate, guaranteed. 1917 is technically impressive, but nowhere near as good as everyone made it sound, at least in my opinion. Honestly, I didn't think the single-take approach was the best way to tell the story, as I felt too much like a passive observer than being taken on the journey properly. It's a disappointment, as this movie doesn't seem to consider the anxiety and emotion that good editing can bring to a film. I can't say I enjoyed it as much as everyone else. Again, technically it's incredible, and might be the most ambitious movie on this list, but that doesn't necessarily make it the best movie on this list. The Devil All the Time was overly long and bloated. There were some great performances in this film, Patterson especially, and there are some effective emotional moments, but Honestly, this film was too much of a depressing, bloated drag for me. As with everything else on this list, your mileage may vary, but not for me. Oh boy, I'm going to get some hate for this one too. The Lighthouse is a movie which is encouraging in its weirdness and auteurism, and I certainly respect it from a filmmaking standpoint. However, it really shit me up in the wrong way, so I can't really say that I enjoyed it. Obviously, most of this is for the reasons the film wanted, but feeling so emotionally uncomfortable, intentionally or otherwise, it can't be ignored. This movie piqued my anxiety in a really weird way, and I can't say that I liked it as a result. I kind of do recommend checking it out, but I can't say I enjoyed it. When they said they were doing a sequel to Borat, I was worried it would be the kind of movie to only work once. And I was half right. The female lead in this film does an incredible job, especially as a relative newcomer, and there really are some heartwarming scenes in the film. But the issue is that Borat as a character kind of only worked that once. If you're looking for another Borat-esque thing to watch to satire the modern day bollocks that's happening, I recommend the Who is America series he did for Channel 4 over this film. Now this movie, I had high expectations for. I mean, it was from the director who made my favourite film from last year. And credit where it's due, it's pretty good. It feels very old school horror, complete with deliberately off-kilter performances, and for the most part it uses pretty good editing techniques, though some of it feels a little bit clunky. The ending reveal can't help but feel like a bit of a disappointment, but the film isn't really about the wolf as it is about John, which is good, because the wolf effects aren't that great. This feels like a movie that was too ambitious for its budget, but it's still pretty good. And I still look forward to Jim's next film. Charlie Brooker is one of the best and most intelligent writers the UK has ever spawned, in my opinion, and his yearly screen wipe recaps used to be a yearly highlight for me. Death to 2020 is a pretty good substitute, though it never reaches the level of screen wipe when screen wipe is at its best. To continue the theme of me recommending something instead of the movie I'm talking about, I laughed more at the antiviral wipe special that Brooker did for the BBC earlier this year. That's about all there is to it. Apart from one thing, actually. That really obnoxiously long Netflix plug in a Netflix original, which you already need to be paying for Netflix to watch. I mean, what the fuck? Uncut Gems is a damn good movie, and I like it a lot. It's probably the movie from this year I rewatched the most, and I like it more and more every time. It's an impressively made movie with an excellent performance from Adam Sandler, who has always been a good actor when he gives a shit and has good direction. Let's not pretend that he's always been this goofball. He's good. He's been good in movies before, and this is a prime example of that. And a lot of the new faces that pop up in this film are almost certain to become regular actors now. I recommend watching Good Time too if you watch this film and like it. I think it's still on Netflix. Uncut Gems definitely is. But it stands on its own as an intensely good watch. Good thing it got literally 0 nominations at the Oscars. Ha, wow, thanks Academy. The struggle with reaching the middle of this list is that it's hard to write a lot about movies that I think are good. Pretty good. Jojo Rabbit is good. Pretty good. And I recommend you watch it to find out why. ScarJo and the lead kid are excellent performers, but Jojo's friend is the worst actor in the movie. It's annoyingly distracting. With that said, some of the fishy accents kind of add to the whole sort of theme of the movie, so it works. It's a good movie, and I do recommend it. There's just not a lot I can really say about it. Okay, I'm grouping these movies together because they're by the same company, and they're about the same level of quality in my eyes. Soul and Onward are great movies with weird issues. Soul has a few more from a filmmaking standpoint, so I'd probably say Onward is a bit better, at least for me. My favourite scene from both of these films is the barber scene from Soul. It's just so well done. I want a mini-series about this barber. He has an interesting personality and an interesting motivation, and he's on screen for like 5 minutes. It's great. The 2D animations in Soul are unique and they look really cool, but the plot doesn't really work well, the ending feels a bit too contrived, and the message, while being important and great, it gets a little muddled. As for Onward, I love the theming of this classic fantasy, but the character designs are kind of hit and miss, and Barley's character is just annoying. He feels a bit like they wanted to get Jack Black to play him originally, but he also has an arc too similar to Peter Quill, which is ironic given they ended up getting Chris Pratt. The ending action scene is awesome, Ian's growth is pretty cool, and the conclusion to the film is really satisfying. I like both these movies, and they're both available on Disney+. I recommend checking them both out. Personally, if you twisted my arm, I'd put Onward slightly above Soul, but I like them both pretty much the same. Sometimes you get hit with a movie that you don't expect to like as much as you do. I thought The Hunt would be a tired, throwaway film. The kind of dime a dozen movie cursed to clog up Amazon Prime Video for the rest of its existence. But I was surprised at how much I liked it. It's way more politically charged than I was expecting, but it acknowledges bullshit from both sides of the political spectrum, which I like. It's kind of subversive, in that plenty of the really recognizable and probably most expensive actors they hired don't necessarily play the biggest parts in the story, and there's plenty of cool, dumb fun gore kills. Thankfully, the movie doesn't take itself too seriously, and that makes it a lot more likable. This is the kind of movie that makes me glad that Blumhouse is so prolific. Sometimes they make a movie like this, which was surprisingly good, with a great ending fight scene. Seriously, it's cracking. Give it a go. It might surprise you. It did me. Every now and then I come across a movie that I've never even heard of, and figured I'll give it a chance and see what's up. I saw Swallow available to rent on iTunes for like 99p, so I gave it a go. And I'm pretty glad I did, because it's certainly an interesting film. I think it's less of a psychological thriller and more of a psychological drama, clearly written by someone who suffered under the themes in this film. It's not a movie about a woman who swallows things. It's a movie about a woman and why she swallows things. Despite some weird editing choices, it's well made as a film. The birthday scene in particular is phenomenal. It might freak you out a little bit with how many scenes of swallowing stuff are in it, but it didn't get to me personally. A pleasant surprise. Alright, I need to cop to my own mistakes. When I made Terminal my movie of the year in 2018, I might have sung its praises a little too much. In retrospect, there are parts of it that are pretty pretentious, for as much as I hate using that as criticism. But I still think it's a good movie, and I stand by some of the praise. I mention this because when I watched Inheritance, which is by the same director, I thought it wasn't as good as Terminal. But in retrospect, there's a lot that I really like in it, including great performances from Simon Pegg and Lily Collins. It's a bit slow to start, and I thought some of the reveals were a bit predictable, but it doesn't make the ride any less interesting or fun. Okay, we're in the top 5 now. The Invisible Man is a good film from a great director, Leigh Whannell. There are some things I like in it more than Upgrade, his previous film, and some things I don't so much. For one, I really like the characters in this film. In particular, Aldous Hodge does a great job of balancing supportiveness and skepticism in his role. His character could have easily come across as too gullible or too dismissive, but I think he does a really great job at balancing the two. Honestly, I like this movie more the more I think about it. So I'll remind you all now that these listings are pretty much subject to change over time, as evidenced with what I said about Terminal earlier, but for now I'm putting it here. It feels right. This one is the reason that this list is so late. I wanted to make sure that I saw this before I made the list. And I'm glad that I held off, because Hamilton is pretty brilliant. I hate the effect that it's had on theatre kids in the real world, speaking as a theatre kid, but Hamilton's stands are not the performance's fault. Daveed Diggs does the best performance, and King George has an excellently funny villain song. He's kind of this show's version of a pantomime dame. I love it. If you're like me and you've been resisting the hype, you might be surprised that it, for the most part, lives up to it. My only point of contention is that I think it makes a better musical than a film. The direction for the filming is amazing, but there's only so much that it can do. If I saw this live, especially younger, I would have adored it. Seeing it through Disney Plus, I like it a lot. Like with last year, the top sort of 4 movies can kind of jump around in my head as time goes on. Like, I put Dark Waters here above Hamilton, despite them being about the same level of quality, because I think it works better as a movie, because that's what it literally was made to be. But maybe I'll rewatch Hamilton and love it. I don't know. For now, I'm putting it here because I love the story. I love the little touches and the reveals in the end credits. Ruffalo has a great performance and he seems really passionate about it. It's a really well done story. I try not to let whether or not I agree or disagree with a movie affect my opinion of the film itself, but I like this movie a lot. And fuck corporation. The Gentleman was the first movie I watched this year, and it was great. I love it. It's probably Guy Ritchie's best film, at least out of the ones that I've seen. The performances are stellar, in particular from Hugh Grant and Colin Farrell. It's a stylish movie, with enough going to keep you invested without feeling bloated. This is a really well-made film, and I love watching it. Also, Bugsy Malone has an excellent few lines. He could really go far in acting if he wanted, and his song at the end is perfect for getting yourself bopping in your seat. I really like this movie, and I recommend it. It's on Amazon Prime, at least it was last time I checked, so give it a watch. Speaking of Amazon Prime, my number 1 movie is also on Amazon Prime, and you already know what it is. Parasite is just excellent. It really is best to go into this film knowing no more than what the trailer reveals, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it's easily one of the best movies that I've seen in years, and definitely the best picture winner. Wait, best picture winner? It's the best picture winner that I've seen. Best picture, it's the best of the best pictures. This script is shit. Don't let the Korean language barrier put you off. It's an excellently made film outside of some slight pacing issues in Act 3 that keep it just below the 10 out of 10 that it's so close to, and it really deserves your time. Check it out. You won't regret it. At least, I don't think you will. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm going to try my best to make more fulfilling and, let's be honest, better content in 2021. I've got some pretty exciting plans that I can't wait to share with you all. But for now, take it easy.